Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of LSND Live Community Conversations. And I am very excited to have Melissa Lennon with me from Altru Inpatient Behavioral Health because this is such a hot topic these days. And she's so experienced in this area that I'm very curious to hear what Altru does for inpatient and then also like what typical days look like and things like that. So thanks for being here, Melissa.
Yes, thanks for having me.
So, I don't like to read bios off the internet and things like that to people. Just give us a quick background, like who you are and what you do at Altru.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm going to start off by saying that my journey with my career is very unique.
Mhm.
So my actual degree is in physical therapy. So I have my doctorate in physical therapy that I got at the University of Mary. I was a physical therapist for 10 years. And in my last few years as a PT, I started to get into a leadership role.
Mm.
And the leadership role that I was in prior to my current role was very much not what I was expecting. It was a lot of sitting behind a desk and learning about regs, compliance, that type of thing. And it just wasn't me. I'm too
Not for
social and
everybody.
I want to be out there. And
Yeah.
so this role came up, and I've always had a passion for behavioral health and mental health. And I just love to create relationships and promote mental health awareness. And so my current role is Director of Business Development at
Yep.
Altru's Inpatient Behavioral Health Center. And so what I do in that role is essentially what I said, I promote and us as a safe place for people to go when they're in crises, all of that. So I
Yep.
reach out to different community partners, referral sources all around the region in both North Dakota and Minnesota. But then I also will do things like this. I have recently been doing presentations in the schools
Very
where I
cool.
speak to students about mental health. And that's been a super unique part of that I've incorporated into my role. And I teach them about mental health and the stigma and just different treatment options, and that it's okay to talk about emotions and feelings and all of that. So that's been really
That's great.
fun. So yeah, so that kind of is what my role encompasses. I'm kind of the wearer of many hats. And so
Hmm.
um, but yes, but in my new role, I've got to experience our facility both at the old hospital and in our new building as well.
Very cool. And it's so interesting that you mentioned children and educating because I just find that there's so much stigma and there's so much lack of knowledge out there that I don't think we can talk about this enough, to be honest. It's
No, I don't. And I was very surprised. Most recently, I spoke to a few middle school students, and yeah, they were not aware that Altru even had a behavioral health center or a place to serve people with mental illness. They didn't even really know what stigma meant.
Mhm.
And so it's very eye-opening.
Yeah. So what when people hear like inpatient behavioral health, because we have these big words for things sometimes, what are some of the misconceptions that you run across as educator?
Yes, so that's a great question. So, um, I think people think when they think of inpatient behavioral health, I think people think of this like scary, dark, like building, and a lot of times the word or verbiage that we used to use was psych ward. So a lot of
Hmm.
people, and a lot of people think that it's just a lot of like people who are out of control or and just not the greatest place to be, and that's truly not what it is. And especially with our move from the old hospital to the new facility, lots has changed with like natural lighting and color and all of that. Um, and
Hmm.
I think people often don't know the difference between inpatient and outpatient.
Okay, so let's talk about the
Yes.
inpatient. That's a really good segue. Yeah.
Yes. So, do you want me to talk about
Yeah.
both, Jen? Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
What's the
yeah,
difference? And
what's
then
the
how do you
difference?
guys help? Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So, previously inpatient behavioral health was located on the fourth floor of the old hospital.
Okay.
So we were all under Altru's umbrella, where now we are in a separate building, and it's still on Altru's campus, and it's right across the street or the parking lot from the emergency department. But
Hmm.
now inpatient behavioral health, we are still under Altru, but we are also under a corporate umbrella which is Universal Health Services or UHS, and a lot of people don't know about this.
Okay.
So how it's divided is that the providers, patients, and billing are all through Altru. So we
Okay.
accept pretty much all insurances. We haven't come across one that we don't accept. And then for UHS, they're the ones who hire our employees. We follow their
Mhm.
operations, their programming, all of that. So there's definitely two different entities involved now. Inpatient, that is that is where people are going to go when they're truly in a crisis and they're no longer safe at home. They're no longer safe at that outpatient level. So they are going to stay hospitalized for a few days while we help them heal, manage their medications, go through group therapy with them, individual therapy, all of that. So inpatient is a true hospitalization. It's for those more severe extreme cases. Whereas outpatient, at Altru specifically, they are connected. So the whole building encompasses inpatient and outpatient. Outpatient is more, I don't want to say less severe, but they're able to cope and live their daily life in the community. So you still go to work, you still go to school, you still live at home, but you either go into the clinic for an appointment and then leave, or you have your appointment virtually.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and then there are things in between, but we don't have a lot of those in between in North Dakota. In Grand Forks, we don't have, well, we have youth residential, but that's very much lacking in North Dakota and Minnesota, kind of the in between.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see that because there's a huge spectrum from where someone could be needing some, like an hour-long therapy will help them versus that won't help somebody and they have to go to the more higher touch services. So,
Yes.
and I think that's probably where some of the stigma comes from is we do tend to think of it as those, for lack of a better, psych ward situations. And really, there's a lot of people out there who could benefit from just an hour every couple days or every week of
Ex-
therapy. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
So when in your unit or the inpatient behavioral health unit, what's a typical day look like there for like your providers and who's working in that area?
Yeah, good question. So, in terms of who we have, like with our leadership and treatment teams,
Mhm.
so we have four providers. We have two psychiatrists and then two psychiatric mental health nurse practitioners. So every day, it's one psychiatrist paired with we call them PMHNPs or the nurse practitioners.
Mhm.
And usually the psychiatrist takes the adolescents and then they split the remaining adult patients. And so typically what they're doing throughout the day is they're going to assess all of our current patients.
Mhm.
Um, and then to kind of back up, we do interdisciplinary team meeting in the morning where we talk about all the patients, but then the providers go off and that's when they assess current patients on our unit. And then they also, consult patients in the ER because right now in our current state, we can only get patients through an ER or hospital,
Okay.
whether it's Altru's ER or hospital or regional ERs and hospitals. That will change eventually, but that's our current state. So they are going to be throughout the day assessing patients that come into the ER, assessing patients that are in the hospital, as well as assessing all of those, consulting all those regional referrals that come in from outside of Grand Forks. And
Mhm.
then, doing a lot of documentation. So our providers are very busy throughout the day.
Mhm.
And
Can
then we
imagine.
also, yes, right, exactly. And then we also have an intake team.
Okay.
And so that consists of our intake manager and intake assessor. They are the ones that handle all of those regional referrals that come in. So they review those, and if they're appropriate, that's when they contact the provider to determine if we can admit or not.
Okay.
And then they contact that referral source back. And when I say we're eventually going to get to a point where it's not just ER and hospital referrals, that's when our intake department is fully staffed and fully operational. We will
Mhm.
actually have the capacity to do walk-in for patients,
Okay.
which I think that's going to help the stigma a lot because we can bypass the ER. and
Right.
come directly to us. It will also be nice because we'll be able to take referrals from places other than ERs and hospitals. So, outpatient clinics, even legal services of North Dakota. We could take we could take a referral from you guys if you had one. So
Okay.
pretty much it opens us up in that way. So that's what our current intake team is doing. And then in terms of staff on the floor, so we have nurses and techs. And so they're the ones that are providing the direct patient care during the day. They're the ones that are, doing the meds, taking blood pressure, doing our safety checks, doing meals, doing snacks, those types of things.
Mhm.
And our nurses, typically they work 12-hour shifts.
Okay. Those are
And
long
then,
days.
yes, very long days. Yes.
Hmm.
And then we also have a social worker. So she does a lot of the discharge planning and talking with patients. She also runs a group throughout the day.
Okay.
And then our director of clinical services, she oversees kind of all of that. And so she'll sometimes do groups and she'll help with discharge planning and that type of thing. Our behavioral health techs, they also are trained to lead a group or two throughout the day because
Okay.
that is our primary mode of treatment besides med management is the programming or group therapy throughout the
Mhm.
day.
That makes
So,
sense. Trying to
yes,
find
exactly.
the
Yes.
combination that works for people. Yeah.
Yes. And then we don't currently have one, but we will here shortly, an activity therapist. So like a recreational therapist, they're the ones, they specifically lead the rec therapy or activity therapy groups.
Okay.
So those are the ones that are kind of, it's more of a leisure activity, but it's making it therapeutic.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And it makes
yes,
it sometimes easier to handle therapy if it seems like I know children often use play therapy with it works
yeah,
for adults too.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
All kinds of things
Yes.
like that. So right now, how many patients can the inpatient unit take at a
So,
time?
so we have 24 beds.
Okay.
So we have 18 beds on the adult side and six on the adolescent side.
Okay.
Our age group for adolescents is 13 to 17, but
Okay.
11, we always say they're case by case.
Okay.
It kind of depends. So
And do you find that the demand is way more than the 18 and 6 beds that you have?
yes,
Okay.
especially during the school year for adolescents.
Interesting.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what I think building up the understanding and the need for this is really important because there's so many people out there that said, "Oh, I need help, but I can't find it. I can't or I can't get into a
Yes.
program," type thing. So,
Yep, exactly. So I do feel like the summertime there's of a lull, but
okay.
and I think it's the weather's nicer, those types of things, but the demand is there,
Yeah, definitely.
unfortunately. Yeah. So
So, how do you coordinate with community partners? Like legal services in North Dakota, we're working with you on discharge planning, but how do you communicate or how do you coordinate with all the community partners? Because that's a big part of your job is what all the things that you
yes.
do. So,
Yes, absolutely. So my role is basically making contact with people on a daily basis,
okay.
whether it's face to face, whether it's virtually, via phone call, via email. I'm constantly, and I'm always make myself available. In that if there is something that isn't right, or then I want our community partners to reach out to me as that liaison to
Mhm.
kind of bridge that gap that we do have. And then I'm also the one where I collect resources and then I bring them to our social worker, and I
Okay.
say, hey, Legal Services of North Dakota, like this is what they do. I met with them. This is their contact, that type of thing. And
Okay.
then I bring that to our director of clinical services too. So I get a lot of, because I mean, they're very busy with the direct patient care
Hmm.
portion. So yes, they can make time to meet with people, of course, but like on a daily basis, like what I do is not feasible. So then I'm kind of the person to bring it all together. So even, for example, with the Grand Forks Public Schools, of course, that's an important community partner because we get a lot of kiddos. And so I've helped to coordinate things, so I've been kind of the middleman. And then it's like, okay, our social worker and their director, coordinate that meeting together.
I think
So,
that's really important because we have that too at LSND. We've got Allison Anderson as our program engagement manager, who you know. And
yes.
the reason why you know her is because of these types of community coordination type meetings. And I think some organizations probably don't realize how helpful it is to have someone in that role. And so if anyone's watching from any type of community organization, having an engagement manager of some sort who can help facilitate all of those relationships is huge. And I think that's probably why you're seeing so many new things pop up on your radar, is because now that they know you're there, they can connect with you. So that's great.
Yes. And to kind of add on to that,
Yeah.
so my job or my role did not exist when we were just under Altru's umbrella in the hospital because of course Altru has their own marketing
Right.
department, and so there wasn't individual ones for each department. And so but I think that we've gotten a lot of feedback from a lot of community partners that since we moved, and having me has just been extremely helpful for that
Yep.
relationship and really smoothed out processes a lot.
It definitely helps. So
Yes.
let's talk about the other side of inpatient, is the discharge and what happens to someone when they're being discharged and how really important it is to find all these resources for them. So someone's been identified to be discharged. What happens at Altru with that?
Yes. So that is another great question. So our we are a short-term facility. So our
Mhm.
goal is the stabilization piece. And then if they're not ready to discharge home or into the community, that's when, we also try to set them up with something else. But we really truly, since it is such a short stay, we start discharge planning from the day of admission.
Okay.
So we kind of determine, are they going to be appropriate to discharge to the community with outpatient resources, or do we need to send them somewhere else? Do we need to send them to a step down like PHP or IOP? Do they need to go to a residential facility? Do they need to go to a drug treatment center? Those types of things. So we're starting that process right away. And then, of course, calling the appropriate parties involved, that whether it's relatives, family members, guardians, social service agencies, human service centers, whoever, to kind of coordinate all of that to make sure we're all on the same page. And so and we also have health unit coordinators. They're the ones that make those phone calls for outpatient appointments. And if a patient, if they don't have a psychiatrist or therapist or counselor, we would try to set them up with their primary care provider to then get a referral for one of those
Okay.
things. Of course, if they already have established with somebody, we would try our best to get them back with them, of course. But the other thing too is, we'll try to utilize virtual options if that's an option as
Hmm.
well, because sometimes the wait lists for some of these places are very long and we're trying to get them in within a week.
Yeah.
So that can be another segue that we take with discharge planning. But we really, that is something that we put our heart and soul into or are really working on, because we know that that's such an important piece of the puzzle to prevent rehospitalization, to make sure everybody's on the same page, to set the patient and family up for success. The other thing is for adolescents are required to have family meetings prior to discharge
Okay.
involving their family, so the social worker and the patient. Adults, we can have them, but they're not required for
Okay.
adults.
That makes sense.
Yes, exactly. So that's another part of the discharge planning that helps kind of tie everything together, is just involving the family to kind of figure out, hey, what's going to happen at home. Our director of clinical services has also just done a fabulous job. She's been here for about almost 6 months, and she's done such a good job of kind of amping or ramping these things up, like for lack of a better word, and just
Yeah.
really like dug deep into extensive safety planning and having them be able to fill out questions about who to call in times of a crisis. What are some coping skills you could do
Hmm.
before? And all of those types of things, and making everybody sign it and making sure we're all invested
Yeah.
in that patient and their discharge.
I think that's really important too. And I could see how in 6 months that could very much ramp up because you start seeing the effects of that right away with not having to have the reentries and not having to do as much crisis on the back end. So that makes
Exactly.
sense. What,
Yes.
and you may not have an answer for this question, but or what off the top of your head, but what are some of the biggest gaps you're seeing when someone leaves inpatient care? What do you see as far as the resources that are out there?
And part of it, like I said, is that the PHP is partial hospitalization.
Okay. Mhm.
IOP is intensive outpatient. So
Okay.
it's basically outpatient more than it's multiple times a week. And
Mhm.
and even residential for adults. It's a lot of the in between that we're lacking because sometimes I mean they do have it at Prairie and Fargo, some of
Yep.
those things, but um that can be a huge gap, and sometimes we might have to send them further away than what we would want to.
Yeah.
And so I would say that just in North Dakota and Minnesota, those are
Those
just
in
big
betweens.
gaps. Yeah,
Yeah.
the in-betweens.
It's so interesting because that is so costly to communities and taxpayers and everybody with not to have those services. And I don't think people realize how much is lacking until you go to look for services and they're like, wait, there's no availability or the wait list is like you said, months long and someone needs help now. So I think people don't realize that yes, it's okay for someone to go get help, but then where do they go to get it if there's nothing available? So
Yes. And that's why there's a company called Charlie Health. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's a virtual IOP. And so it's a
okay.
virtual intensive outpatient. And it's really nice because they don't have wait lists, and their schedule is very flexible in that if you do work 8 to 5, you can do your sessions at nighttime. You can do
Okay.
them on the weekends and those types of things. So
Mhm.
like I said, those are kind of things that we've looked into further,
Yep.
that just because of the wait lists and lack of services nearby.
Yeah, and the whole virtual thing has been, I know it's always been difficult, but I think once COVID happened and more virtual systems got set up, I think it's actually a great option for many things. Legal services too. We get a lot
Right.
of legal services that can be done virtually. So,
Yes, I agree. I think COVID, I mean, that really changed people's mindset or, opened people up to being more willing to use the virtual option.
yep, as long as there's a way to do it, I think that
Yep.
that's a great thing. Um, do you have to try to wrap this up? There's so much more we could talk about, I feel. I
Yes.
just wanted to let people know that you're there, that things happen and that there's resources available to some extent and that we're helping find more. But is there any upcoming events, any upcoming initiatives or partnerships that you want to talk about or tell people about?
Yeah. So that first one I talked about or I mentioned briefly was the intake department. So
Yep.
once that's up and running, it's going to be huge for our community. Um, So that's a big thing for us. And then the other big thing that's happening right now, if you're in Grand Forks, you can see there's a lot of construction going on around Altru. It's going to continue over the next year because
Okay.
we are actually expanding, and
Okay.
we are adding 24 more beds. So in
Wow.
talking about improving access to services, and that is where we're going with that. And so we will be increasing the number of adult beds, but also increasing the number of adolescent beds too.
Okay.
And so I that is very exciting too, just to be able to provide services to more people.
I think so. That's
Um,
great. That's
yes.
fantastic to hear that it's basically
Yeah, so
doubling.
that's
Yeah.
that's really exciting. And then in terms of other, partnerships and things, I don't have, I also part of my role is to do a lot of conferences and community events and those types of things. The community events are kind of wrapping up in terms
Yeah.
of, because it's going to be winter. It's already getting cold here today, and so, but I do have a couple of conferences coming up outside of Grand Forks. So those are just ways to kind of share what we do and who we are. And then just another little plug is that we are looking for staff too, both for our current facility and for, our expansion. And so just going on to the Altru website and looking under behavioral health, there is a link on there for all of our
Open
staff
positions.
openings. Yes.
Okay. That's great. And I hope fully staffed is the dream of
Yes.
everybody's these days. So I hope people
Yes.
jumping on
Fingers
board with that. Yeah.
fingers crossed. Yes.
Is there any contact information? Is the Altru website the best way to look for information about the behavioral health unit? Is that the best way to look at things up?
Yes. So it's altru.org/behavioral dash health.
Okay.
I'm sure you could just Google Altru Behavioral Health too. Of course, I also can provide a lot of info as well. And so my email address is m and then Lennon as in John Lennon. So mlennon@altru.org. And then my office number is 701-780-5687.
Very good. Well, we will
Yes.
put those in the show notes as well so that
Okay.
people can reach out to you, especially community partners that
Well,
may
yeah,
have
because I can
resources.
do
Yeah.
I can't
Yeah.
do tours for, of course, like community like
Right.
members, but community partners, I can do tours, I can do virtual meetings, presentations, all of the things.
Very good. Well,
Yes.
thank you so much for your time this
Yes.
morning. I really appreciate it, Melissa.
Thanks,
Um,
Jen. It's been fun.
and we're really excited to have Altru in our network and to be working with you all on discharge planning. So,
Yeah.
everyone, thanks for listening in and join us for more LSND Live community conversations next week on Monday morning. Thanks.